There it is. It just takes a second, Mr. Impatient.
Who's impatient? I'm not impatient. All right, I'm kind of impatient.
All right. Boom, boom, boom.
Why do you call me impatient again?
Somebody want to start the show?
Yep, and hang on. I'm popping out the chat because we have so many people that listen to us live.
Yeah, no one's been showing up lately. It's been a bummer.
Well, last week I didn't tweet, so.
Oh,
that would
I
make
had
sense.
John didn't show. Oh my god, man!
Save it for the show.
Journeyman Featherbone Bourbon is hardcore. Oh god. Whew. First sip of that was rough. That's going to be a rough one to drink right there.
I drank one of mine from today. It was a 12-year something or other. I don't know. I've come to the conclusion I'm not much of a Scotch person.
All right, hold on. Welcome to the show. I'm Tom Rideout. This is PHP Ugly episode 107, if you can believe it. Here with me, as always, is Eric Van Johnson.
Hello, Thomas.
And here with me, as occasionally, John Congdon.
Hello.
Always occasionally, the John Congdon.
Always occasionally. I do have to apologize. Okay, last week, legitimate excuse. I was sick. We took the kids to this water park for an entire weekend. Really cool place called Great Wolf Lodge. I could talk about that for way too long. And the kids got super sick. And of course, my wife and I later that week got sick. So I wasn't here last week.
So hold on. Before you apologize, just trying to understand the story correctly. You took your kids to a indoor pool that's festering with a bunch of other snotty kids inside a pool, and they all walked away sick.
Yes. Correct.
Okay, just okay.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Kids. What a pain. But I do have to apologize for not just that, but I've actually been absent for 2 weeks. If you hadn't noticed.
We didn't even notice.
Didn't notice that, actually.
I decided I wanted to talk about this because I think it's funny. To go back and listen to 2 episodes ago, and I'm basically not here at all.
I did notice that.
Yeah, but do you know why I was absent?
Were you really drunk?
No. So Eric knows the reason. So as you may know, marijuana is now legal in California.
So I was close.
We're having this conversation.
We're having this conversation. And it's one of those things I've been curious about for years, just not done it. I was like, it's legal. I'm curious. Let me start trying this. So I have some friends who are doing the marijuana vape pens instead of actually smoking the actual plant, right?
Sure.
And so the weekend prior, I tried very slowly. The first night I did just one hit. I'm like, whatever. Second night, did 2 hits. Again, all I really felt was relaxed. I didn't really do much for me. Then I decided, you know what? Before the show, I'm going to do 3 hits that night. And I was just basically like, all I wanted to do was go to sleep. I didn't even care about the world. I just wanted to be left alone. It's like, can you guys stop talking already? I'm done.
He was baked out of his mind.
So bottom line, I'm not into it. I gave away what I had, my vape pen. I'm not a pot person, which leads me to another point. I'm going to just keep rambling because I can. Listening to NPR today.
Because he moved on to heroin, so now he's all amped up.
Yeah. So listening to NPR, California has state elections coming up, I think next week or something. But listening to some of the candidates, and California made marijuana legal, And of course, this one person who's running for board of supervisors or something doesn't want cannabis sales in his district. And it's like, you allow alcohol, you allow cigarettes, you allow what's the other thing I'm trying to think of? Wine, beer. But people will try it, and if it's not for them, they're gonna not do it. Just kind of like what I just did. I just don't get it.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot, about how it's weird how much there's still such a strong stigma attached to the consumption, the use and consumption of pot here in California now that it's legal. It's like, okay, well, it's basically on the same level as alcohol as far as consumption goes.
It's far safer as far as public health.
I mean, yeah,
that's up for debate.
But all that aside, whether it's safe or not, it's just we've been so ingrained, especially our generation, of the war on drugs, just say no mentality, where that was drilled into us all through school, and that pot was this gateway drug. It's so very hard to just shake that stigma, and you're always very cautious about who you share this information with. It's weird, and I'm curious if that's ever going to change. But yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of a cool time to be here, and because obviously you already walked into this, Thomas, where you're at, because I believe it's been legal in Colorado for a few years now.
Yeah,
and somebody was asking me about it here. They're like, "Hey, what's been the impact?" And it's only been legal since January, and it's just like, I just tell them all the time, I'm like, it was really a non-event. I mean,
people that were already using it didn't care. They just can buy it legally and probably more safely than they used to.
Oh no, we care. It was a big deal, because you have to understand that a lot of people see it as a race issue, that marijuana possession was used by the police to unfairly incarcerate minorities. And that's been the huge push behind the people who are in Colorado, like me, and want it legalized in California, is that this is not just a substance issue. This is an issue with real societal problems behind it.
Right. Okay. You misunderstood what I said then. When I said didn't care, people that were using already were already using, so they can now probably buy it more safely.
Yeah, and the price is really different.
And the people that are curious and wanted to try it now feel more confident and safe, feel like it's safe to try, and then can make up their own mind. And the people that were against it will still be against it. So to me, there's not that big of a deal.
The piece that I find really interesting that's happening, at least happening here in California, I assume it happened in the other states as well, are that the people who are serving time, or the people who have been arrested for it in the past, are filing petitions to basically have those charges dropped and taken off their record. And there's now a process in place. If you're, to my understanding, obviously I'm not in jail doing time for any sort of possession, but my understanding of it is there's now a process in place that if you're currently incarcerated for drug possession and that drug being marijuana, there's a petition you can fill out to be released, to have those charges dropped. I think that's pretty, because the other big argument with, one of the driving forces behind keeping marijuana illegal, where it was the privatization of prisons, and these companies not wanting to lose their revenue stream. Yeah. But that's a whole nother. I'm not looking to get into that conversation at all. I'm really hoping to see the tax benefits that everybody's been promised by legalizing it, and seeing that money get injected into schools and programs that need it.
Yeah, I didn't mean to make this whole episode about marijuana. It's just kind of like what had happened to me 2 weeks ago.
It's only been 10 minutes. You're having issues with time dilation here.
No, I'm saying it's time to move on. That's what I'm saying. This is supposed to be a PHP programming podcast, not a drug podcast.
I am super excited about this incredible new opportunity. Have you guys looked into Howie Coin?
I own like 50 of them.
What is a Howie Coin?
It is an amazing new ICO. It's pending right now. Guaranteed 1% daily return using the blockchain. It is just stunning. You know, I mean, it's all of those popping keywords, discounts on initial and early purchases, big countdown clock for when it goes public, a white paper that generally just says nothing, but it's a white paper. You know, all of the things that you see and just say, I absolutely need to invest in this right now.
And the catch is?
It's not actually real. It was created by the SEC to show how gullible people can be easily parted with their money.
I'm sorry, the FCC?
SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission.
Oh, SEC. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
are they releasing the numbers, like how many people would be willing to participate?
I haven't seen this, but if you click on the buy coins now button, it is not nice to you. it's very, I mean, literally lots of red flags on the page. You've been scammed. Howie coins are completely fake. Welcome to investor.gov, the Security Exchange Commission site designed for individual investors. I mean, and then it just breaks down everything that they said on their big production fancy website and says, this is how you know this is a scam, because we kept saying it over and over and over.
What is this supposed to do? Well, I mean, seriously, this is so stupid.
I am like on the mailing list for that.
You want to go after somebody? Go after some of these, MLMs that have people sell crap products and make their friends come in and sell crap products. It's like
they're doing that too.
Well, this is stupid. Why are we giving this? Why are we?
So I told you about the terrible Bitcoin meetup that I went to.
Yes,
and I'm still on their mailing list, and they still have daily emails about the hottest new coin to invest in, and all of them are shockingly scammy. And and I've seen the people who are dumping their savings, their life savings, into ICOs that they have no idea if they're real or not, or what they are.
None of this is new. It's always been like this. It was this with junk bonds. It was this with, I mean, it's always this. There's always a quick path to riches scam. So they slap the label of what's this called? Encryption.
Blockchain.
What?
All right, cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency. That's what I was looking for. So they slapped the label of cryptocurrency on it, and that's they ripped off the junk bonds label and slapped cryptocurrency. It's always there. This is nothing new. Why are people shocked by it?
It's not people are shocked. It's the fact that the SEC is actually trying to help here. Like, if you were actually going to invest in this and you clicked on the buy now, and then you get to this page like, hey, just so you know, this was a scam, and here's how you can spot other scams like this. They're trying to prevent you from doing it on a site that would really take your money.
And I think they're promoting people like us who are tech savvy to put this on our Facebooks and Twitter and to give it the scam line and
try to talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, because and now again, it's not the what
they only did this so that PHP Ugly would talk about it.
There's an internal memo.
We're a big market. But it's not necessarily the what it is that they're doing, but it's the fact that it's the SEC that's doing it, because they've had a very hands-off approach for a lot of things crypto, and it looks like they're paying more attention and trying to secure the market in a way that people who are in the cryptocurrency game agree with.
Okay, so you think they're trying? So
they're trying to help.
Is your opinion? Okay. You think they're trying to help? You don't think that this is just an all-out saying, "Hey, cryptocurrency is a scam. Don't believe any of these pitches."
No,
I haven't read through it all, but the pieces I did look at were look for these key terms. These are signs of a scam. Things you should be looking out for. Not all cryptocurrency is bad.
Yeah, this is very specific to. Here's how ICO scams look, and don't get hit by one.
Okay. All right. Well, you've done your civic duty and talked about it. I think.
I've blown their cover. Now I feel bad.
So, what have you guys been up to this week? Instead of going right through news articles, we figured.
I mean that just goes right back to me. I have an issue.
Oh, what's your issue?
So this week, we've had occasional out-of-memory errors on our production servers.
Mm-hmm.
And those are always real fun to try and dig down. There's nothing indicating why it's happening or who it's happening to, and it's really...
You just go into your PHP INI file and kick it up by a few gigs. You'll be fine.
Yeah, that's what I do. It's easier
that's all I do. It's like, no, there's more RAM in there. I'll just give it more RAM in the PHP INI file. It's there for them to use.
We ended up finding the issue, and naturally it was unexpected user behavior. We have...
was this spoiler alert? Was this the issue you posted in Slack this week?
It was.
Okay. Let's talk about that.
It's a tricky.
It's not a spoiler alert if you don't spoil it.
Yeah. It's a spoiler alert that I know where he's going with this.
So we have lots of videos on our website in the range of 20,000 videos, and you can mark those as a favorite video.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out a number of users were favoriting every video.
Okay.
Now, what we don't have is a watched indicator. So we don't have any way of a user just immediately recognizing that they've already watched a video. So I am assuming that creative users have ended up using the favorite system to mark something as having been watched.
Okay.
This is completely unexpected behavior. That's not why we built the favoriting system. And the way the favoriting system worked was that in the constructor for our controllers, we grabbed all of that user's favorites, and when rendering the page, we checked if the video was in that array. And if it was, then we popped a little icon that said favorited. But when I emulated our user's behavior, I found that array was taking up 43 megabytes of RAM on its own.
That doesn't seem like that much.
It's quite a lot when you have to...
43 megabytes for a user or 43 megabytes for all users? A user.
Yeah.
You guys have a fairly large user base, right?
Right, and this is queried out of the database, and then it's cached, but every time you add a new favorite, we flush the cache for that user. And so what ended up happening was we got massive lists of favorites that would slow down the rendering time. Because remember, now we're pulling this up, and then we're finding out if this ID is in an array. And then we're doing that for like 30
megabyte array, yeah.
Right. And then we're doing that 30 or 40 times on the page. So that's not a well-indexed array. It's not ordered by any logical search pattern that PHP can use, and it's a total nightmare. And so my issue was, how do I stop this? How do I provide the same functionality but not look up?
Just a quick question before you get to your resolution. Were more than one user doing this? I mean, it's
many.
See, that's a red flag to me. Because that's such an odd behavior to do. If you were to tell me a couple were doing it over time and you guys just realized it, maybe. But for there to be a few users, or as you put it, many users doing it, I don't know. Seems weird to me. Seems like something else is going on. And you're sure there's not a bug in your code that just like automatically marks it as favorite?
Yes. Yeah, because I had to write that bug for myself to test this, and it was not an easy loop.
It's just weird, man.
Well, I think it is a reflection of how people use our website and the fact that we were missing a watched tag.
But all of a sudden, for a bunch of people to start using that same,
it wasn't all of a sudden. It was just that we figured it out all of a sudden. We had bumped up the RAM usage per thread, and we had done a lot of mitigation stuff, but we hadn't spent the time to dig deep into why it was happening.
And obviously, these are users with accounts, right? Because that's the only way you can track them.
Right, and they're users with accounts, and they're users who are not inclined to contact technical support.
Of course. But out of curiosity, what is your per page memory usage? If 43 megabytes is one factor of causing an out of memory issue.
I'm not sure. It should probably be in the 8 megabyte range. It's a very, very featureful site.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a blog.
You don't want to know what I have our website set to on one of our clients.
Well, we cache everything. If our page has more than 0 queries on average hit, then it's too many. So
you still don't want to know what it is set to. I just looked it up.
I was really stumped by this because we were fetching the scene count, the video count, much later than we were fetching the customer's account information. And I didn't want to go into every place where we were rendering video and change it to do a lookup of some kind. And remember that this is a lookup that is per video per user. So that's not a easily cacheable query for us. That creates thousands of cached queries per user that we don't want. And I ended up coming up with a pretty novel solution to do as little work as possible, both programmatically and for me. Instead of having to go through every single page and change the way it renders, I came up with a simple solution.
And that is?
I added a data tag to the favorites icon, which stored the video ID.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the page loaded, I fetched all of those data tags and asked the server if those videos that were currently visible were favorited.
Makes sense.
And boom, one AJAX call, half a second, it immediately populates the favorites list, and it performs one simple query with a maximum of 30, 40 video IDs in it.
So prior to this, you were pulling the entire array.
Right.
Now you're pulling just what you need.
Just what's visible on the screen.
How does that work with caching? So you were trying to cache the entire thing.
Yeah. So now I take that one page of requests, I MD5 it, I serialize it and MD5 it and throw that into a cache tag. So now if they view that same page, then it's cached.
Gotcha. But if you're adding new videos and like every page for that user changes, their cache is busted.
cache has to refresh, but it's a fast query already, and it's a single query in the actual Ajax hit, so it's nice and quick. And it managed to work out really well. I basically put this request in the footer of our main template, and boom, it was problem fixed.
Interesting.
When you were talking about this in Slack, you were hinting around about the idea of using Redis, but you ended up not going that direction?
I was considering using Redis, but it produced the same general issue, which is that it would make this massively inflated collection of IDs that I'd still have to fetch early.
Right.
So
what Java are you using Vue on this? Is this the site you're using Vue on?
No, I'm not using Vue on anything.
Oh, I thought you were using Vue on some stuff.
I wanted to, and I never got comfortable enough with it to start putting it anywhere.
Yeah, we've added Vue to our second Greenfield application, and the team just loves it, man. They're just digging their teeth into it. The site has basically become a SPA, a single page application. Not a true single page application, but everything's a API call.
I mean, it's the true SPA, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah,
when I think
we've talked later about it.
Yeah. But it's quick, it's responsive, it's nice. I'm not gonna lie. And like I said, the team is loving using Vue. We had another Greenfield application we did that some of the members who are working on this one had worked on, and that was the client that we discussed a couple shows back that we had finished up the application, we handed it off, and they had originally done that application in Vue as well. Now, due to some requirements by the client, they ended up pulling Vue out. But that was like their first taste of Vue, and man, were they excited about it. I mean, listening to them talk about it week after week just got me more wanting to do more Vue development. And a couple of the developers even went as far as to start a Vue user group here in San Diego, and I completely have embraced Vue development. But now we're on to the second Greenfield application, and we have more control over the solutions that we implement for it. So we'll definitely be sticking with Vue. And already the team is just have embraced it so much. It's exciting. As somebody who's always struggled with, and I don't have a good explanation to why I struggle with JavaScript and the JavaScript frameworks out there, but I always have. I've done enough to be a complete hack and get things done, but I have never reached a level of clarity that I felt like I understood what was actually happening. And I'm getting there with Vue. Like, I can't code in Vue the way I could in PHP yet, where I can just sit down and start typing things out. But I feel like Vue would be that path that would allow me to do that. It's exciting for me.
Yeah, I've been using it a lot more and really enjoy it. It's been really just getting I wrote a feature for a client and was able to get it up and running way faster than I thought I was going to be able to, and was so excited when it actually started working. I wasn't expecting it, so I was I was pumped by it. I was like, wait, this isn't supposed to work yet, but it does.
Isn't that the opposite of programming?
Yeah. So John, I throw a bunch of words together. Things work sometimes. Sometimes they don't.
John, did you get an opportunity to listen to last week's show?
I started to, but I did not listen to the whole thing.
It started making him sick again.
We touched on a topic, and I forget now, in having this conversation, how much of the conversation from last week we've recorded and put on the show, but Thomas and I actually had a much deeper discussion about it. But Thomas had mentioned the fact that he had gotten a new vehicle. He'd gotten a Jeep. And he said his immediate reaction was to go out and get a Jeep tattoo. And I was like, you know what? It was like this.
I mockingly said that my first reaction was to get a tattoo.
I think I talked you off that ledge a little bit, but Thomas and I had a more in-depth conversation about it. And again, I don't remember if we put it on the show or not. So I've got ink. I've got a big tattoo on my forearm, and I got it very late in life. Matter of fact, I've only had it for a couple years. I've had it for a few years now, but
I guess we're 100 episodes in, aren't we?
Yeah. So I don't have an issue with tattoos. I have people in my family who have tattoos. My wife has several tattoos. My children now have tattoos. My mother had tattoos. So I've always never had a problem with it. I just never had a good enough thing that I wanted tattooed on me. And the conversation Thomas and I had is I always struggled with branding. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm a massive Batman fan, and getting Batman tattooed on me somewhere would make complete sense, but it's still a brand. And even today, where I own a company, I've actually created a brand. I mean, I wear it every day on my body in the form of clothing. I sticker it all on every item I have.
I can literally see it twice in your video feed right now.
Exactly. And even though I created this, even though I'm passionate about it, even though it's literally my brand that I started, well, John and I started, I still would hesitate and don't think I ever would tattoo it on my body because it's a brand.
I'll do it if you do it.
Wow.
Oh, now wait a minute. That changes
the game changes completely.
Things a whole lot.
First off, you know he's lying. You 100% know he's lying.
No, he's not lying. I can guilt him into doing it. If I did it, I could guilt him into doing it. Oh, maybe that's what we do at Wave PHP. John and Eric get tattooed.
Do we need like a tattoo booth at the hotel lobby?
So that leads into our next conversation. So John and I jokingly started talking this morning. I'm like, hey, how about we offer to give somebody a free Wave PHP ticket if they get the logo tattooed on them? And we were joking around about that, and we were thinking about like sending out a tweet or something. And again, I love the Wave PHP tattoo. It's something I helped create. Logo. It's something I helped create. It's something I'm very passionate about, but don't think I would tattoo it on my body.
I'll do it if you do
it. See, now it seems like John wants to get it tattooed on his body.
However, I'm going to say Joe Ferguson is a beast. This guy, we're right before the show starts. We go to Twitter. I'm like, oh, let me tweet something out, and lo and behold, in my stream, I got a tweet here from Joe Ferguson getting the OSMI logo tattooed on what looks to be his forearm. I hope that's his forearm.
Now, to be clear here, the OSMI logo is much cooler than the Diego Dev logo.
To be clear here, it is not.
It is 100% much cooler.
You're out of your mind. So, but yeah, I'm not going to fault the guy. I mean, again, the guy's passionate about it, and John and I are getting the Diego Dev tattooed soon. So,
speaking of OSMI, they've just sent out their latest mental health and tech survey for 2018. So if you're interested in helping them gather more information, go to their Twitter page and click on the link.
I'm all over this because I can fill out half of their requirements in one form.
Full disclosure, OSMI is a sponsor of Wave PHP, and we do appreciate that.
Definitely.
We've never done full disclosure before, have we?
I feel like we should. Especially
with President doesn't have to, we don't have to.
This is true. So China bought 1,000 tickets to Wave PHP. Hey, I don't really need to say anything about that.
Just saying, Ban Ki-moon's the best.
You guys in the government, leave the government alone.
Speaking of government, no, I'm not going to
get
into that. I'm not going to get into that yet.
I do appreciate that.
I've been doing a lot of testing lately and absolutely loving it. I think we've talked on the show before about Scrutinizer, and that service in itself I like, but what I needed to get done was unit testing for this project from a completely empty database, and that is proving super challenging because the code was existing before I got there, right? And there, a lot of the features and everything is so tied to a lot of the data in there, and figuring out what is required to get a system up and running is very challenging, I guess, is for lack of a better term. So it took me probably 4 or 5 days, not full days, a few hours each day, trying to get to a point where I could spin up a brand new database, migrate it to get the tables and everything set up, and get just enough information into it to get all of our unit tests. And I think we're up to 1,000 tests now.
Ooh.
running and getting everything to pass in a service outside of the dev database they had. I mean,
what's your coverage?
Like very low. Super low.
You've got 1,000 unit tests and your coverage is super low?
Yeah.
That's a big code base.
That sounds like you're either micro testing or
it's definitely micro testing.
Monolithic.
No, it's definitely micro testing. I don't have the numbers. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but
I only work with tests in one place, and it's the IronQ stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just testing the endpoint functionality. So it's just testing the publicly revealed API calls. It's not testing.
You're talking about the IronMQ package that you manage for what the hell is that called?
A Laravel Collective, which is now updated and actually working.
Yeah, good job.
5.6 compatible.
Nice.
And it just tests the API endpoint. So it just says, can you queue something? Can it encrypt when it's queued? Can I pull the queue message back if it's a theoretical message and it has the same packet structure as the one I sent? So it even in the unit test, it doesn't ever send anything to IronMQ. It mocks all of IronMQ's functionality.
So if you're mocking that,
yeah, but you're assuming IronMQ is going to do its job correctly.
Right.
I
mean, that's the whole point.
So I'm just testing my endpoints and I'm mocking everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And the mock you just keep it up to whatever IronMQ's standards are,
which don't change because I'm keeping the API version at whatever version it's locked into from when I inherited the project in the first place.
But that's scary. You're not.
That doesn't mean IronMQ isn't changing it.
No, the IronMQ is very good about following their standard or following Semver standards. So I know that as long as I'm locked in the three branch, I'm not going to see changes in functionality.
Right. But even I guess you need to change your tests. You need to change your mocks to mock the proper data, right? That's the big deal.
Yes, but the data I generate. So my tests have to change when Laravel changes. So what I'm really testing is the inherited properties from Laravel. So IronMQ is on top of the queue service provider from Laravel. So the queue service provider, when it changes, that's when things break. And I have to go in and figure out what changed and how the data is being produced differently. And all of my tests were passing, but there was a core functionality change in Laravel 5.6 that broke named queues completely. and I didn't catch it until months after 5.6 was released, because my tests didn't send real data to real servers. So there's definitely a problem there, but I also don't have a method for querying the endpoint API to see if a job properly got deleted. I have to go into IronMQ with an active account and make sure that it did. So my testing is not just unit testing covers me there for changes in Laravel, but it doesn't cover me for changes in Laravel that break untested functionality that needs manual verification. I don't like testing. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself.
Oh,
testing is awesome.
Yeah, John had been talking about it. Say, testing is really changing. Again, we talk about the Greenfield application. We've got, at any given time, we've got 3 to 4 developers actively contributing to it every day, plus another 2 to 3 developers that pop in for feature sets or when they have time working away from legacy code to contribute to this Greenfield app. And the only way that is possible for me to feel comfortable is knowing that these developers are running these tests. And even if they're not running the test, if they open up a pull request, that scrutinizer service that John mentioned does run the test, and it's impossible to merge it unless those tests are passing. So the confidence level I get around what's being contributed and its impact to existing code base has really gotten so much better. And the refactoring is just so nice. We've already gone in and refactored. We've had to refactor certain methods, and it's having those tests are just so valuable. So valuable.
I do have to throw a caveat in there, though. One of the pieces of code I was working on was this 300-line function, which in and of itself is ridiculous. I wrote unit tests around it, and I think I got up to 94% coverage on this test, and then spent time refactoring it. All my tests still passed, and luckily somebody else set up Ghost Inspector tests, which, if you haven't used Ghost Inspector, it's basically like Selenium, right? You can go in and you can record actual steps through a web browser, and then every time you do a pull request, it can kick that off and run through these browser tests. And somebody had written tests for code I released like a month ago, and before I had this specific piece of code unit tested with PHP unit, and his Ghost Inspector test caught an issue that I missed in my unit test. And it wasn't in that 6% that wasn't covered, mind you. It still passed all my unit tests, but just because you have coverage there doesn't mean you've got everything figured out.
Yeah, there's always edge cases.
Yeah.
Are you guys writing strict for the Greenfield app? Like expected inputs, that kind of stuff?
No.
That's what and
we could be, because we are on PHP 7 for that Greenfield app, so there's really no reason.
Definitely should.
7.0?
7.2 is what we are for the Greenfield.
Yes.
7.0's only got a few months left.
Yeah, he just meant that on 7 you have the return types available.
Yeah. Well, I really want to get into doing the strict return types, because catching stuff while I'm developing for me is much better than catching stuff during testing.
So I've been using annotations for return types for a while, but I've got, again, this being a legacy app that I mainly work in, I have a lot of returns bool or an object. And it's a pain in the ass, because then I've throughout the code, it's like, if there's a lot of places in the code that assume the object's returned, it doesn't even check for false or null or whatever.
Yeah.
So Scrutinizer is catching a lot of that. Like, hey, if you return a Boolean, you can't look for this this property or this method call, which is great.
Which is a fatal error in PHP. Like trying to get a property of a non-object is my absolute worst bug that I see all the time.
And it kicks off Bugsnag all the time. This is happening because 99% of the time it works the way it's supposed to work. And there's just not enough checks to make sure it works. In my opinion, and from presentations I've watched, I feel you should either return an object or throw an exception.
Yes.
But a lot of people that I work with disagree with that. And they think returning false or null is fine as well. Thank you. Okay.
My new paradigm is to return only one type.
Yeah, I was about to say that
combine types. Yeah. So if I'm going to throw an integer, I'm going to throw an integer. If I'm going to throw an object, but never an object or false or null or and working with JavaScript has really pounded that into me too, because JavaScript cannot handle that null objects at all. Like it really just crashes out, and it'll crash out the rest of the JavaScript for every other included JavaScript in the page. Like it doesn't just fail gracefully, it fails nightmarishly.
Yeah, and that's one thing I hate about JavaScript. I mean, I like it as well, but man, that one error just wreaking havoc on everything.
Yeah, and it seems like the more sophisticated my programming becomes, the less like PHP 5 it is. Where all of this flexibility of PHP about, soft typing and any return value you want, all of that stuff, I'm starting to just erase. I'm starting to get rid of any flexibility in the code whatsoever. And I'm coding to very hard standards like I've used in Visual Basic.
Yeah, my issue, I mean, I like that. The only issue I run into is ints and strings, because you never really know if a 1 is a 1 or a string 1.
Yeah.
And pulling information.
I mean, don't you know? I understand you don't know when you're looking at it, but don't you know within the method, like by the time you get to the return, you would know whether or not it's an int or a string, or at least cast it to one or the other.
Yes, in that case, but the data objects package they use to get data out of the database, I mean, I could spend time looking. I'm assuming 99% of the time it's really returning a string. They're not casting it to an int. So you start looking at, in PHP Storm, all over the places, you should be using a triple equals, or to check for type as well. And I'm like, I don't really know if it's been converted to an integer at this point, or I could assume it's a string out of the database, but did some other object somewhere convert it to an integer?
I believe that's one of the big advantages of Doctrine, where Doctrine requires you to include the schema for the database in the code. But
still, it's only included in one place. It's still included in just the one place. It still wouldn't help the situation John has, where he's in another piece of the code base, getting that return and not knowing if that return is an integer or string.
I think what he's saying though is if you write to a Doctrine object, I'm assuming on the set it says, "Oh, you're writing to this ID field. It's an integer, not a string 1."
Right. Doctrine is strictly typed on the schema, and so you can't pull from it or push to it without getting a collision on the type.
It depends. I haven't used Doctrine in forever, so I don't know if you're at the model level before you actually save it, does it complain?
I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, there's that separation between the database and the code that I've never really nailed down well.
Yeah. Well, I found a new issue in this code base this week, or late last week, either way, where they are so tightly coupled to the database, and they're the data objects package they've been using since PHP 4. And basically, data objects, it creates the table schema for them, so they know what fields they have, but then they extend from that and end up adding additional properties to the object. And I don't know how this hasn't bitten them time and time again, but on an export they found it where as you're looping through your result set, it's not clearing out all those properties. So if you go in,
if it's set at a previous record and comes back around, it's still there.
Right. On the second record, it's there, and the export says, "Oh, I've got this data right here." And it's like, well, yeah, from the previous record because it wasn't cleared out. And that's just one of those things where I think they've been lucky up until this point, and the workaround or the fix that they want for it is, I don't know how to say it. It's a micro solution. It's fixing that exact issue versus the broad issue.
Yeah.
And I can understand that you want to be safe. I mean, you're making millions of dollars off this product. You don't want to accidentally make it worse.
Shoot yourself in the foot somewhere else. Yeah, that you're not anticipating it.
Yeah, but at the same time, you're like, but you know it's wrong. It's like, this isn't working. I have testing showing this doesn't work, and I want it fixed. But again, it's so hard. It's such a balancing act. You want it to be right, but you also want it to continue working and not break.
Yeah, that's tough. And again, that's where good code coverage and good tests really help. But unfortunately, yeah, you're not in that position right now.
Nah, not at all.
So one of the other things we talked about last week, and I don't know if you've gotten to this point listening to the show, John, but we talked about Visual Studio Code, and they released their new live sharing plugin where it's kind of like a Google Docs situation. I'm sorry. We'll take a break here. What's the
Thomas shared some screenshot. I don't know what that's about.
It's from episode 105.
Oh. I thought it was from this episode. He's wearing the same shirt.
It's you looking a little glassy.
I was so glassy.
I didn't share with Thomas. Did I share with you, Thomas?
No.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know. John totally assumed that we knew.
I told you before the episode.
Well, the paranoia sets in fast.
I told you before. You can keep all this in the episode at this point. I don't care. I told him before the episode, I'm like, this is either going to be a really good episode or a really crappy episode.
All right. So in case we do keep this in, because we typically cut breaks, I stumbled a little bit because John had posted in Slack, and I thought he was referring to the story I was leading into. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm confused. Should I keep talking or not talking? I stopped talking. And Thomas had posted an image of John from the episode where John previously admitted that he'd spoke before the show, and he looks baked as shit. But John had told me a couple of days later, or maybe even the next day, that was his status. That was the situation. But Thomas and I never even thought that about John. And
I didn't think that was the problem. I knew that he was extra quiet, but I didn't know.
And
I didn't know that's because he could feel the universe.
We talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it. I was like, wow, that was like John was like especially not contributing today.
It was very mellow.
So John had disclosed to me because I hit this vape pen and it wiped me out. And I didn't share it with Thomas, and it was for no reason other than I didn't think about it, to be honest with you. But I thought it was kind of funny. But now looking back, it was funny because John had assumed that Thomas and I had figured it out and were making fun of him.
That's so true. Every time you guys said I was so relaxed or something, I'm like, yeah, I am.
Yeah, that paranoia kicks in quick. You got to be careful with that stuff.
It wasn't even paranoia. It was just I thought you were teasing me.
We should have known by the bags of Doritos on your desk, and you just put them in your face.
Orange fingers.
Oh, good. Drug usage is funny. have any of y'all seen Deadpool 2 yet?
No.
Oh,
I'm
my
about
God.
10 minutes into
can't talk
Deadpool 1.
about that. I can't talk about Deadpool 2, but there are a couple of jokes in there that I'm sort of ashamed I thought were so funny. And like there was one especially where I'm like, okay, I've never thought about even trying that, but I want to try that, what he just did. I'll share it with you.
Yeah,
Huh?
Share later. I do have a question about Deadpool.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm like 10 minutes into Deadpool 1. Like the first one. Is it really somehow associated with X-Men throughout the movie? And if it's a spoiler, don't tell me.
No.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No.
What do you mean no?
It's the X-Force.
Well, no. I mean,
the X-Men.
In the comic,
it's associated with Marvel, which is in the same universe. But the movie itself.
Stop. In the comic book series, he always has a relationship.
Yes.
Some external relationship with the X-Men. And so, yes, that translates in the movie. The sort of involvement he has with the X-Men is sort of the same sort of relationship he has in the comic books as well.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't like somehow being thrown into the movie in a weird way. All right.
No. It's not just being shoehorned in there because that's like the hot property or anything.
You have to understand that canonically, one of his superpowers is that
don't tell me I haven't seen it. Wait, don't spoil it.
It's not a spoiler. It's a core concept of the characters that he is the only person who's aware that he's a comic book character, that he is not real.
Spoiler alert,
so,
I'm only 10 minutes in. I haven't seen that part.
He addresses the fourth wall quite a bit.
Yeah, he breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah, that I have seen. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's again consistent with the comic books. That's not something that they're just doing for the movies. So.
Oh, interesting.
Eric, I need you to cover your
Stop. We were having a conversation before we got sidetracked. I want to finish that conversation.
Okay.
I'm allowed to sidetrack. You're not.
I know. The perks of dating the boss.
Yep, exactly. Gotta put out once in a while.
You're going to sidetrack me again. We were talking about it at Crepes. So today is Thursday. We record Thursday. Well, Thursday morning is our Crepes Day, where most of the Diego Dev team here in San Diego get together and we have crepes, and we have some real in real life conversations. And the one that came up today is, I wonder how many people in the PHP community or who listen to the podcast think that John and I are a couple, because especially the way I speak about John, because I always refer to him as my partner.
It's not enough.
I've said and I just edited the PHP podcast for PHP Architect Magazine. And in that podcast, I say, I feel so lucky to have you in my life. I'm like listening to that. I'm like,
wow.
Just so you know, I feel the same way about you. Just so you know.
Hold on. I'm getting a phone call from Freud.
So we were just talking about, like, I wonder how many people think we're actually, like, we go to like a conference and we're always hanging out together, and it's weird, but I'm perfectly comfortable in my manhood and my sexuality and all that, so it doesn't bother me.
But the weird part is how comfortable with his manhood and sexuality you are.
What are you holding in your hand?
A bottle.
That is the biggest syringe of meth I've ever seen. What is that?
Who's doing the sidetracking now?
Oh, no.
So to clear up the record, no, you guys are not dating. Wink.
Right. We just do some light petting. Can't imagine why people think we have a relationship.
You haven't seen us in the back of the car after a
moving on
SDPHP meetup.
Okay, We were talking last week, John, about Visual Studio Code, and they had just released their Live Share plugin. And I had mentioned
how hear about this.
Okay, so you listen to that show. I assume if you're listening to the show now, you would listen to the previous show, because this would be a weird show to pick up the series on, and you've missed all the backstory. I thought to myself how cool this was, and how I wonder if I'm ever going to really have the opportunity to use it. And this week, I had the opportunity to use it. It just happened to be with Marcus again, but I was having some problem with some code, and I couldn't get. I really gotten it down to one line of code, and I couldn't get that one line of code to work correctly. It was a Laravel application. It dealt with the disk driver, the storage driver that they have, and I was trying to push something up to S3 using it. So I reached out to Marcus, because Marcus is deep into the Greenfield app as well. I'm like, hey man, let's do some pair programming on this, because I can't figure it out. And of course, Marcus pops on, and it's the problem isn't obvious at first, and so we're trying different things, and he takes over for a while and types in a few things, and I take over for a while and type a few things, and within like 2 or 3 minutes, we got it working. But it was just like such a different. I've paired programmed before, remotely paired programmed before, especially even with John, and it's always like, no, go 2 lines up. No, now down. Go down 1 line. Okay, that line right there. Go over to the the third bracket.
Because you're doing a video versus actual pair programming.
Yeah, it was such a change for it was very much like Marcus is like, oh wait, let's try this, and he just starts typing, and of course my code is changing, and because I'm running this locally. I'm like, okay, we're not on some remote server. We're not doing a TMUX session. He changes it. I run it locally. I'm like, oh, yeah, what? That worked. That's perfect. And it was really cool. So
really need to give that a shot. I'm still not into VS Code. I mean, I haven't even tried it because I don't bounce around like you do, but does sound like a really cool feature. Right. But there's so many other features in PHP Storm that I really enjoy.
And I gave VS Code a solid 2 weeks of full-time coding, and I bounced back to PHP Storm. So there are definitely limitations within VS Code that, or things that I prefer in PHP Storm. I still think that had money not been an issue, if money had been an issue, like if I had to pay for PHP Storm and I wasn't actually making a living as a PHP developer, I could easily use VS Code. But again, I could easily just go back to Vim. That would actually be a bigger decision for me, whether I went back to Vim or stayed with VS Code. I don't know which one I would do.
I have something to say about VS Code. Is that I've downloaded the VS Code deb file for Ubuntu. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You have a ticket here for the new GitHub desktop app.
Yep, I want to talk about that. Yeah.
There is no Linux version. There's no deb file or RPM file.
That's weird because it's an Electron app too. So there's really no reason why there shouldn't be one.
Right, and there's no reason that Microsoft's Visual Studio Code should be on Linux. So what kind of upside down world are we currently living in where GitHub doesn't have a Linux version of their desktop app and Microsoft has a Linux version of their free coding app?
But I'm still confused going back to Eric stopping you from talking because he wanted to finish the conversation we're on, but then he started talking about VS Code, and
he did. That was the conversation.
That was the conversation I want to talk about.
I'm so confused.
So since you,
don't worry, you'll come down slowly.
Since you brought up the GitHub app, I'm curious. It's funny that this came up in this situation. So I downloaded the GitHub app because I'm constantly wanting in spoiler alert, it's not a feature set of even the new desktop app. But I'm wanting to be able to handle pull requests and things like that through a desktop app without having to go to the website. Not that going to the website is a huge problem. It just would be nice to have the desktop app and be able to flip through the repos very quickly, handle pull requests, handle the conversations around pull requests, and the code review around pull requests in the desktop app. And to be perfectly clear, that is not an option on the current desktop app. Again, it's just access as a client. Why? Because it's something I would want. Because currently now I have to keep going to GitHub and looking at pull requests. I envision like a desktop application having a little bit of a notification system to let me know when comments are being added. Currently, the only way I know a comment's been added to GitHub is eventually, I get the email. I mean, it happens pretty quick, but I don't monitor my email. I am a documented email hater, and so I will only pop on the email a couple times a day. But unless I'm working through a problem on GitHub, I'm doing a code review on GitHub, I tend to look at email a little bit more frequently because that's how I get my notification. And I would love that in a desktop app where I just have a desktop app like Slack running with all my speaking as somebody who manages multiple projects again, have all my projects running on a desktop app and all those conversations happening in that application just seems like it would be really beneficial. So
that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. The current the app doesn't do that. It's merely a client, a get pull, get push sort of client. But it brought up the question of would you guys so I use command line 95% of the time. I use PHP Storm. Maybe I'm actually using PHP Storm a little bit more to do pushes and pulls. But other than that, I use the command line. I saw one of our developers today uses Tower. And I asked him, I'm like, why do you use Tower? Like, because Tower is not a free application. At least I don't think it's free. But I asked him, why do you use Tower? He goes, I use it for one reason. He goes, I can do this. And he selected 2 commits from within Tower, 2 random commits. I mean, they weren't even in succession of each other. But he selects them to the 2 commits and he says, show diff. And it does a nice little layout to show them what the difference is between those 2 commits.
You can do that in PHP Storm.
Yeah, I do that in PHP Storm all the time.
Yeah, I use PHP Storm probably 95% of the time.
In PHP Storm, you can actually select a block of text and you can say git and then compare with branch. And you can compare that block of text with a different branch and see when it changed and how it changed on that branch.
So to back up a little bit there, that's interesting, Thomas, and might want to explore that again. But to back up a little bit, so you're saying in PHP Storm, and I didn't even know this was a feature in PHP Storm. You're saying in PHP Storm, I can point to 2 commits and say, show me the difference between these 2 commits for a whole project?
Yeah, so if I'm in a commit right now, if I'm in 150 and I right-click on the page that I'm on, and I click on Git and then compare with branch, it gives me a list of branches to compare to, and I select it, and it pops up their Git diff window.
That's branches, though. That's not previous commits.
Oh, I see what you mean. I can pull up show history, or I can hit compare with, and if I hit compare with, then it gives me specific commits to compare to.
Interesting. I don't want to fire PHP Storm now because it bogs down my system, but I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can. I use it all the time for updating branches, all my pushes and pulls, my merging, cherry picking out of other commits. I mean, I primarily use PHP Storm.
The only time I use it is when I'm being blamed for something, and I have to find who committed that specific line and point the finger at them.
That's
well,
fun too.
Yeah, I think the real strong point for me when the thing where I said, okay, I'm going to use this every time for this piece now, was when there's a merge conflict. I love the resolution workflow that kicks off.
The biggest thing I use the command line for outside of PHP Storm is resetting my branch, because I think you can do it in PHP Storm, but it's not clear.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm resetting for whatever reason, I go to command line for that.
Mm.
I do that. I do that a ton too.
Yeah, occasionally checking out just because I'm on the command line already. I'll check out and do some things, but again, most of my Git operations at this point are in PHP Storm.
I do Git stash a lot, which is something that PHP Storm doesn't have an intuitive interface for.
But it does it automatically for you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it just does it for you if you tell it.
No, I need to stash when I'm writing on the wrong branch and I need to switch branches.
Right. As soon as you do that,
it's called a smart checkout or something like that.
Yeah, it does it. It's native. It stashes it, does your checkout, and then pops the stash right away for you.
Okay. Yeah. See, I use command line for 99% of Git commands. So
what you're actually talking about is the PHP Storm shelving feature, which is very similar.
Okay.
We mentioned we mentioned a couple things. I've been doing an experiment. I'm sorry.
Actually, hang on. Before you go on to that, you were talking about the new GitHub desktop app.
Mm-hmm.
Since we're on desktop apps, the new friggin' Hangouts chat app.
Oh my God!
Have you looked at?
Do we want to talk about this?
Oh my gosh! So
where'd that go? I had that on my Trello board.
I had it on my Trello board.
I had it in my to do. I had it in my to do. Yeah, Google Chat client.
Yeah, so they're replacing Hangouts, especially in business accounts, with their new chat app, and we think they're trying to compete with Slack, but oh my God, is it horrible?
Oh gosh!
Right, but didn't Slack go down the day that they announced this?
They did. Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it did.
But yeah, whatever. It's still bad.
It's so bad.
So it's the new and shiny, and I've got a real issue. I'm like the tick, man. It's like if there's a shiny star out there, I'm going to go after it. And I saw this pop up. I'm like, oh, cool. Google has a new Hangout chat that's going to replace. It's supposed to be replacing Google Chat and Google Hangouts, and making it all one. And so, sure enough, I opened it up, and I'm like, okay. The first thing that was kind of like Slackish is that you create I forget what they call it, like a team or an organization or something. And I'm like, all right, well, obviously I'll create a Diego Dev one, and I'll invite some Diego Dev people to it, and it just was so bad. I mean, it's a chat client. It really takes effort to be bad at it, and this was bad. So they tried to break you into this. In Slack, it's this concept of threads, which for our organization nobody uses because it distracts. It's a very distracting,
not intuitive
branch. Yeah, right. Exactly. And this new Google Chat tries to force you in this thread. So I didn't realize this at first. When we're chatting, I think we're having a chat back and forth, but we're not. It's like every time
your conversations back and forth.
Yeah, every time you chat, you're starting a new conversation, and you're supposed to reply in that conversation. It was just horrible.
Stupid.
Yeah,
that's what you like for.
But when a new thread pops up, you have to click a button to say "Show me the." Basically, show me the thread. It really just says "new message," and you have to say "Show me the new message."
This is gonna be my point. It's like it doesn't even give you the chat. It just says, "Hey, there's something here for you."
All right, so it's terrible. Moving on. Eric. I need you to. You're covering the last episode. You're covering the doom.
I was talking about something else first, though.
You got to cover the doom and gloom here.
I've been dealing with if you remember the conversation that we had when we went to Austin, I had left my laptop in an airport. And it was found. It was sent to me, but I had purchased a new laptop in the meantime. So I told John, and I think I mentioned to you last week, Thomas, that I was thinking about making my laptop my daily driver. Yeah. And I started doing that this past weekend, where I bought some connectors so I could hook it up to my display, because it was a mini display to USB-C connection and all this crap. And I can't believe how much trouble I'm having with this. I can't be the only one, but it's so bizarre. So first thing, shout out to John for saving my ass. We recorded the PHP podcast for PHP Architect magazine, and it was weird. We used the same tools we used for PHP Ugly, and I was telling John, I'm like, that's bizarre. My levels don't look quite right, but they are moving, so it's hearing me. And I go ahead and record the whole podcast, only to come to the realization that I didn't have my audio hijack configured correctly. It was actually using the wrong microphone. So fortunately, because John and I both used the same configuration audio hijack, he had a version of my stream recorded as well, so I was able to use that. But the big problem I'm having, so I've had an issue in the past when I try to use my laptop with external keyboards and mouse, in the sense that, like, if I did a reboot, I had to open up because I typically use the laptop with the clamshell shut. So I don't use the screen. It's just shut and set to the side. And I used to have a stand for my MacBook that was like a bookshelf where I could stand it up, and that way it took as little space on my desk as possible. As a matter of fact, I still have it. I went and dug it out, but again, can't use it for the same reason I couldn't use it before, which is when you reboot the laptop, if it's in clamshell mode, you can't log into it through an external keyboard, because like the laptop won't recognize the keyboard until you've logged in. So you have to open the clamshell, log in that first time, and once you have that initial login, you're fine. So you can close the clamshell, the system can lock itself, and you can unlock it with your keyboard and mouse. You just can't do it that initial time. So that's always been an issue for me. And whatever. I don't.
Yeah, Ubuntu doesn't have that problem, but whatever.
I've learned to deal with that. But the problem I'm having now is, and I think I've corrected most of it, is what was happening is my laptop was going to sleep. So it's very common for the laptops to go to sleep because it does it to conserve power. And every time my laptop went to sleep, I would lose complete connectivity to my mouse and keyboard and any external device like my camera, my microphone, and I would have to unplug the USB connection and replug it back in to get all that stuff working. It's been so annoying. So I've been
in Windows. There's a setting for that.
This is what I'm saying. There's got to be a setting. I've got to be missing a setting somewhere. Now I've since prevented it from going to sleep when it's plugged in. So I've said, hey, if the laptop is plugged in, don't go to sleep.
Waste all the power you want.
Yeah, well, it still shuts down. I mean, it still goes into standby mode, but it doesn't completely go to sleep. It doesn't turn off the hard drive and all that. That's corrected some of it. I'm still losing my camera from time to time, but at least my keyboard and mouse will wake it up and allow me to log in and work. But I'm going to give it another week. But if the situation doesn't get better, I'm going to go back to my desktop, which I wasn't a fan of to begin with either. So I'm so hard to think. Okay, doom and gloom. I'll do doom and gloom this week because I know Thomas is biting to get to the doom and gloom.
Because I have a response to it.
You have a response to it. Okay. It's well documented. Myself especially, but I think the whole team here has acknowledged that we're Amazon Echo users, and Thomas walks away with his response. Should we wait for him?
He said he had a response, but he walked away. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna talk anyways. Echo users. So, and I, especially of the group, have a lot of Echoes and keep wanting to buy more. I want to buy a couple of those Echo Dots, and of course, we've all theorized. We've all.
Why do you need them in the bathroom? That's the question.
Why don't you have one in the bathroom?
Because the spots have video.
You're sitting there. You're sitting on the toilet. You don't want to be touching things. Why wouldn't you have an Echo in there?
All right, move on.
What's embarrassing is
surprisingly succinct. Yeah, that's.
I do actually have a Google Assistant in my bathroom. I like to listen to music while I shower. What can I say?
Okay, Google.
Anyways,
clean me.
If that will be a thing. Okay, Google, turn my shower on, temperature, whatever, and make it feel the way I like it.
Jefferson's where you go through the little tunnel and you're all of a sudden clean and clothed.
Exactly.
The Jetsons.
Jetsons. I said Jefferson's, didn't I?
Jefferson's was a little more rough than that.
It's 11:30. I'm ready to go to bed. You guys are taking way too long.
We've talked a lot, especially with Mr. Doom and Gloom, Thomas Rideout, but we've all had this realization that we've put hot mics in our homes,
bathrooms,
and again, I've always stated I've already done that with cell phones. I mean, and it's true, you've already put hot mics on your person. So the fact that it's now in your home as a standalone device is not that surprising. But one of the first documented and acknowledged cases of the Amazon Echo device recording conversations, and in this case, I guess it's sent to a friend of the couple that it recorded.
The employer of the man who was recorded. The boss.
I don't think it was an employer. I think it was somebody who worked with him. Was it his actual employer?
I believe it was his boss.
I don't remember that piece of the article, but what had happened, and you get the impression that the conversation was a little unflattering. Like maybe it wasn't something that, it was clearly something that they didn't want to share with a third party. And so this Echo device recorded a conversation between this man and his wife, and then sent that conversation to another party who happened to be an employer, an employee, a friend of somebody who works with, I think it was the husband at the time. And that is just so bizarre.
But how? But
that's what I know.
Okay, so let's hear it. How?
Amazon eventually responded to this and said, here's the chain of events that occurred exactly. So they know what happened because they log everything that your Alexa app is, or your Alexa is doing.
Yeah.
They pulled up the log.
That's not a secret because you can see that in your Alexa application. It'll say, "Hey, I heard you say this. I responded with this." Yeah.
So at some point in the conversation, the device heard the activation keyword. And then shortly afterwards, because there's a 5 to 10 second activation time, it heard the command send message. Out loud, it said, to whom? At which point, something in the conversation got interpreted as this contact's name. The device then asked again out loud, contact name, right? And then in the conversation, interpreted the word right. And then the rest of the conversation was recorded and sent to that contact name.
But I thought Alexa also asked for confirmation for before it's sent. So I know with my Google device, and it happens to me all the time when I'm driving, I have the option of replying to messages or even sending a message. So I could say, Google, send John a message, I'm on my way, and it'll reply, okay,
I'm going to. Do you want to send it? Do you want to send it or change it?
That's basically what happened. And
that's a weird series of events.
Amazon has stated publicly that their explanation for what happened was sourced from the device's logs. So they looked it up on the device. They looked up the device log and said, this is what happened. It thought you said, send a message and then a name and then, are you sure? And then yes, and then the message and then yes. So, I mean, they're saying it's an unlikely chain of events, which, is it unlikely? Because
it seems like a creative commercial could take advantage of that too. If
your device is set to volume 1,
right,
where you don't really hear it,
and volume 1 is real quiet, really, really quiet. If you're wearing headphones, you won't.
But volume 4 is way too loud. And it goes up to
I know. It's such a mess.
What is up with that? Exactly.
Well, because you guys don't know, you can say volume 4.5. You can say you can. I do it.
I've tried. It does not work.
I say volume 2.5 and it works.
There seems to be that little break point between 3 and 4 that it's like 3 you can't hear it, 4 it's blaring.
So they're saying.
I'll try it again.
Now, my interjection for doom and gloom, because I always have to get the last word, is that it was confirmed that a device, a calculator application, got added to the Alexa skills, which included a conversation logger, which sent the conversations it logged to a third party, and could be installed on an Echo device using subsonic frequency communication. So you could encode
subsonic conversation.
You could encode the command to install the skill on a device. You could encode the command to install the skill on a podcast or a YouTube video. The device would pick it up and install the skill, and then the skill would return a text log of all conversations to a third-party endpoint.
Just to be clear, we're not doing that on this episode, right?
That you know of.
I'm not editing it, so I don't know.
I might need you to edit this one.
I might be editing this one, so yes.
Nah, I'll edit it. Man, I've been editing like crazy this past week.
Ugh.
All right. Is that it? Is that what? I feel lucky if that's all the doom and gloom you have.
Yeah. So sleep tight. It's not all the doom and gloom I have, but we're straight up out of time. I mean, I was gonna make this whole episode about government spying because what Florida is doing, hoo boy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And real quick, did this impacts us directly since I have it on here. EFF won their case over a patent troll around a podcasting patent that I guess they were going after a bunch of the top end podcasts and basically trying to extort money out of them.
Yeah, they were saying that they had all the rights to distributing audio content.
Yeah, and they even went after Adam Carolla, or was that his name, Carolla? I think the MTV guy who, my understanding of it, really kind of created the concept of podcasting. I remember listening to him when he was first doing this, and before it was even called, I don't even think it was called podcasting at the time. And he just had this concept of doing this daily audio blog and publishing it, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty. I thought back then that, yes, I thought it was going to be the new radio, but I also thought it was going to be the new email system. And I envisioned clients being created for grandmothers and grandfathers.
Well, now you're giving away ideas for free.
The same way email clients are, where people would record conversations and then send it, not send it to anybody, but allow their people, friends, parents, whoever, to subscribe to streams and hear these conversations. Anyways, long story short, too late for that.
Thanks for listening, Mom.
The EFF finally won this case over this patent troll, and I guess the whole thing is squashed now, and they're not able to sue people. I'm sure they'll keep it going in the courts for a while, but it's a big deal, especially for a small podcast like us, who this is just us wanting to. This is really our friendship time. It's our time to hang out, to talk about the stuff that interests us, and to include people like Thomas in on that conversation. And
and it's run on far too long for John's appeal.
And we definitely feel like I'm glad to hear that this platform is going to be able to stay alive for a while. So it would have sucked for it to have died over something like this. All right.
Way to bring it down, Eric.
Jeez.
That was good. No, that was good.
Mr. Doom and Gloom here.
Never take that title from you, I promise.
You can't. You gave it to me.
That is true.
I coined that phrase. Oh, I coined another phrase. What was the other phrase I coined?
Just the tip?
Oh, that was it. John, you remember the other phrase I coined? PHP is the Deadpool of programming languages.
Oh yeah, you did that.
What?
That's right. Yeah. I'm idea man today.
You didn't tweet it out, so I took it.
Yeah.
It's already. I've already got rights for it in the movies and everything.
Damn it! You're gonna sue me. Not now. After the podcast gets published, you'll sue me because I say it in there. Shit.
Yep.
Oh,
Diego Dev will be mine.
All right. Episode 107 in the bag. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Tom Rideout.
I'm Eric.
I'm John Congdon.
Keep it
ugly.
Jesus, we're in trouble when Thomas is trying to end the podcast.
I was doing it for John. He was crying.
He's like, fuck it, wrap this shit up, man.
I've stopped recording.
Have you guys done GDPR stuff?
No,
we were just talking about